Chapter 101. The days that followed were a lesson in a new kind of pain. Not the sharp agony of assimilation, or the existential terror of unmaking, but the deep, grinding ache of depletion. The paradox core was a dying ember in his chest, its regeneration agonizingly slow. His risen were silent, their cores dormant, the connection severed by his near self-annihilation. He was, for all intents and purposes, a baseline human again. The thought was terrifying. He spent his time in the warehouse, relearning the simple mechanics of his body without the core's constant enhancement. A flight of stairs left him winded. Lifting a training weight was a struggle. The constant, comforting hum of power was replaced by a silence that screamed in his ears. Lyra watched him with a sniper's patience, her gaze analytical. Withdrawal? She asked one afternoon as he leaned against a wall, sweating from a simple set of calisthenics. Something like that. He gasped. I didn't realize how much I relied on it. For everything. It's good for you, she stated, not unkindly. Reminds you that the power is a tool, not the craftsman. The blade is nothing without the arm that wields it. Jax tried to cheer him up with stories and bad jokes, but his eyes held a new, solemn respect. Rorik would simply bring him water, his silent presence a mountain of support. Silas was the most pragmatic. Use this time, he said, tossing Kaelen a thick binder. Study. The smith dropped off some, light reading. The binder was filled with Dorian's notes on sovereigns, Weaver theory, and the known hierarchy of the anomaly's forces. It was a crash course in the secret history of the world. It was also a stark reminder that their respite was temporary. Chapter 102. Dorian visited a week into his convalescence. The smith looked tired. The usual manic energy subdued. Core integrity at 22%. Dorian announced after a brief scan with a crystalline device. The regression is stabilizing. You'll be back to B-rank authority in another week, maybe two. But you pushed it to the absolute brink, boy. Another second and there would have been nothing left to regenerate. Was there any other way? Kaelen asked, though he already knew the answer. Dorian was silent for a moment. No, there wasn't. He sighed. Alara's final calculations. I've been analyzing the energy residue. She was wrong. But she wasn't insane. The veil's decay is accelerating. The final weaving was a monstrous solution to a very real problem. He pulled up a holographic chart on his device. It showed a steep, downward curve. The purge of the heart of sorrow bought us time. A significant amount. But the underlying trend remains. The anomaly is winning the war of attrition. He looked at Kaelen, his blue eyes serious. You are not just a firefighter, running from blaze to blaze. You must become a forester, planting new trees. The fortification stat you saw. That's the key. Passive patching isn't enough. We need to find ways to actively reinforce the veil. Permanently. The other sovereigns. Kaelen said. Consuming them, it fortifies the veil. In a manner of speaking. Dorian nodded. You are reclaiming stolen authority and reintegrating it into the system. But it's reactive. We need to be proactive. He tapped the chart. Which is why our next move isn't against a sovereign. It's a recovery mission. He brought up a new image. A delicate, flower-like crystal that pulsed with a soft, green light. We need to find a Genesis seed. Chapter 103. A Genesis seed. Kaelen had never heard the term. A relic from before the veil was wounded. Dorian explained. Fragments of the original, perfect reality. They are nodes of immense, stable, creative power. Plant one in a place of great corruption, and it can, over time, purify it from the inside out, weaving a new, healthy patch of veil. They are the ultimate fortification tool. Why haven't we used them before? Because they are incredibly rare, and even more dangerous to acquire. Dorian said grimly. They only form in the calmest, most stable corners of reality, places that have been completely untouched by the anomaly. And such places are now almost exclusively the heavily guarded treasuries, or personal sanctums of the most powerful sovereigns. He zoomed in on the flower-like crystal. This one's signature was last detected decades ago. Our intelligence suggests it was claimed by a sovereign, who values knowledge and collection over destruction. A hoarder. He calls himself the Curator. The Curator, Kaelen repeated. The name felt cold and precise. He dwells in a pocket dimension known as the Archive of Echoes. It's not a dungeon in the traditional sense. It's a museum of lost things. He doesn't create phantoms. He collects them. And he traps the echoes of fallen hunters, adding them to his exhibits. Dorian's face was grim. He is civilized, polite, and utterly merciless. He will not attack you on sight. He will want to study you, to add you to his collection. A mission that wasn't a battle, but a heist. And the target was a collector who saw living beings as artifacts. It's a suicide mission, Kaelen stated. It's the only mission that matters. Dorian countered. A single Genesis seed could purify a place like the Ironheart Foundries completely, making it a bastion of stability instead of a recurring wound. We need that power, and you are the only one who can retrieve it. Your reflective insight will be key to navigating his traps, and your nature as a warden makes you an anomaly he won't be able to immediately categorize. It will buy you time. The path forward was clear, and it was more terrifying than any frontal assault. Chapter 104. Over the next few days, as his power slowly trickled back, Kaelen pored over Dorian's files on the Curator. There were no battle reports, only anthropological notes and theories. The Curator's domain was a labyrinth of themed galleries, the Hall of Fallen Heroes, the Menagerie of Forgotten Beasts, the Gallery of Shattered Dreams. His guards were not mindless phantoms, but echoes, perfect, sentient copies of powerful beings he had defeated, preserved in a state of eternal, conscious stasis, forced to act as descents and guards in their own personal hell. To get the Genesis seed, they would have to walk through this museum of horrors, outsmart a genius intellect, and steal from under the nose of a being who considered himself the guardian of all that was lost. Silas called a strategy meeting. We can't find our way through this. Stealth and misdirection are our only tools. Great. My favorite. Jax muttered, looking pale. Kaelen, your reflective insight. Can it see through magical traps, illusions? To an extent. Kaelen said. It shows me the truth of things. A false wall would look like a false wall. A hidden pressure plate would have a different mana signature. Good. You'll be our pathfinder. Silas turned to Lyra. You're our lookout. High ground. Silent takedowns if absolutely necessary. Your job is to make sure we don't get surrounded by the exhibits. Lyra nodded, a grim smile on her face. Quiet work. I can do that. Jax, you're with Kaelen. Your speed and agility will be crucial for disarming traps, he points out. Silas looked at Rorik. Rorik, you're staying here. The big man looked up, a flicker of hurt in his eyes. It's not a slight. Silas said gently. Your strength is our hammer. This mission requires a scalpel. You are our last line of defense here. Guard the nest. Rorik held his gaze for a moment, then gave a slow, resigned nod. The team was set. A thief, a scout, a lookout, and a warden who was still learning to walk again, heading into the belly of the most civilized monster they had ever faced. Chapter 105. The entrance to the Archive of Echoes was not a violent tear or a shimmering gate. It was a single, ornate, oak door set into the side of a forgotten public library, looking utterly normal except for the profound silence that emanated from it. Dorian had provided the key, a complex sequence of mana pulses. As Kaelen channeled his still weak power into the lock, he felt the reflective insight stir. The door wasn't wood. It was petrified memory. The lock wasn't a mechanism. It was a question. The door swung open silently, revealing not a library, but a vast, dark marble foyer. The air was still and cold, smelling of old paper and dust. Soft, ambient light came from no visible source. They stepped inside, and the door vanished behind them, replaced by a seamless marble wall. Location, Archive of Echoes. Environmental analysis. High-density mnemonic energy. Temporal stability, absolute. Anomaly signature, suppressed. Contained. Assimilation potential, none. Energy is catalogued and inert. They were in. The heist had begun. Before them stretched a long gallery. Glass cases lined the walls, displaying artifacts from lost eras. But in the center of the hall, standing perfectly still, was a figure, a man in the armor of a hunter from a decade ago, his face blank, his eyes vacant. As they approached, the figure stirred, its eyes focused on them, and it spoke in a flat, monotone voice. "Welcome to the archive. I am Echo 734, designation, Veiler. I am here to guide you. Please do not touch the exhibits." It was the echo of a dead man, forced to be a tour guide in his own tomb. Jack shivered. "This is so much worse than a dungeon." "Stay focused," Silas whispered. "Kaelen." "Which way?" Kaelen activated his reflective insight. The world shifted. The beautiful marble was revealed as compressed sorrow. The glass cases were prisons of solidified time. And the path ahead was a spiderweb of nearly invisible mana threads, pressure-sensitive alarms. The Genesis seed. He whispered. Dorian said it would be in the conservatory, a place of growth. This is a hall of static things. We need to go deeper. He pointed to a seemingly solid wall at the end of the hall. There. It's an illusion. The real path is through there. They moved forward. A team of ghosts in a museum of the dead. Chapter 106. Navigating the archive was a nerve-wracking game of perception and patience. Kaelen's reflective insight was their compass, revealing hidden doors, pressure plates, and lethal mana fields disguised as beautiful mosaics. They passed through the gallery of shattered dreams, where floating, crystalline orbs contained the fading hopes of thousands. They crept through the menagerie, where majestic, phantom-like beasts paced in invisible cages, their roars silent. They avoided the echoes whenever possible. Some were passive, like Veiler, simply repeating their scripted lines. Others were more aggressive, patrolling with the skill and power they had possessed in life. In the Hall of Fallen Heroes, they had to freeze as an echo that radiated S-rank power walked past, its gaze sweeping over their hiding place without seeing them. Lyra had her knife pressed against the throat of another echo. A swift, silent takedown that left the spectral guard dissipating quietly, before it could raise an alarm. The tension was a physical weight. Every step could be their last. They weren't fighting for their lives. They were trying to remain invisible in a place that saw everything. Finally, after what felt like hours, Kaelen pointed to a simple, vine-covered archway. Unlike the opulent marble elsewhere, this was made of simple, warm stone. The conservatory. He breathed. Beyond the archway, the air changed. It was warmer, humid, and filled with the scent of earth and growing things. They stepped into a vast, indoor garden under a crystalline dome that showed a false, perfect sky. Here, the plants were real, thriving in the curated environment. It was a place of bizarre, paradoxical life. And in the center of the garden, on a pedestal of living wood, floated the Genesis seed. The flower-like crystal pulsed with its gentle, green light, a beacon of pure creation in this museum of death. It was unguarded. "That's too easy," Lyra murmured, her rifle scanning the lush foliage. "It's a trap," Silas agreed. Kaelen pushed his reflective insight to its limit. He saw the life in the plants, the stable energy of the seed, the intricate irrigation system. And then he saw it. The trap wasn't a pressure plate or a mana field. It was the keeper of this garden, sitting on a stone bench, nearly invisible against the bark of a large, strange tree. Was an echo. But this one was different. It wasn't vacant. Its eyes were closed, and it seemed to be meditating. It wore simple robes, and its face was serene, wise, and powerful. Kaelen's insight revealed the truth. This was no mere hunter. This was the echo of a pre-veil mystic, a true sage. Its power wasn't for combat. It was for perception. It would sense the slightest dishonest intent, the faintest flicker of greed. They couldn't sneak past it. They couldn't fight it. To even approach the seed with the intent to steal would trigger an alarm. Or worse, they had to ask for it. Chapter 107. The plan was born of desperation. They had one advantage. The Curator valued knowledge above all else. He collected unique things. Kaelen was the most unique thing to enter his archive in a long time. "All right," Silas whispered, his face set. "Change of plans. Jax, Lyra, fall back to the entrance. If this goes wrong, you need to get out and warn Dorian. What? No way. Jax protested. That's an order. Silas said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Kaelen and I will handle this. Lyra looked like she wanted to argue, but after a tense moment, she nodded. Don't die. She and Jax melted back into the shadows of the archive. Silas turned to Kaelen. You're the exhibit, kid. I'm just your presenter. Ready. Kaelen took a deep breath. Feeling the weak but steady hum of his core, he deactivated his veil shroud, allowing his true nature, the paradox core, the warden's authority, to radiate outwards, a subtle but undeniable signal. Together, they stepped out from the foliage and into the open clearing where the Genesis seed floated. The meditating echo opened its eyes. They were ancient, calm, and saw everything. Visitors, it said, its voice like the rustling of leaves. To the conservatory, you seek the seed of Genesis. We seek an audience with the Curator, Silas said, his voice respectful but firm. We bring a new artifact for his consideration. The sage's eyes shifted to Kaelen. They widened almost imperceptibly. Ah, a living paradox. A warden. I have not seen your kind in many turnings of the world. It stood up. The master will be most interested. Wait here. The sage turned and walked towards the far wall, which shimmered and became a doorway. He disappeared through it. They were alone with the Genesis seed. Now what? Kaelen whispered. Now, Silas said, his eyes on the seed. We see how badly he wants you. Chapter 108. The Curator did not arrive with fanfare. One moment they were alone. The next he was simply there, standing beside the pedestal as if he had always been there. He was not a monstrous figure. He was a tall, slender man dressed in immaculate, antiquated formal wear. He had a sharp, intelligent face, silver hair, and eyes the color of old parchment. He held a simple, wooden cane. His presence was not oppressive like the sovereign of reflections, nor chaotic like Alara's. It was absolute. He was the master of this domain, and every atom of it answered to him. His eyes, old and hungry, fell on Kaelen. A warden, the Curator said, his voice a soft, cultured baritone. I thought your kind extinct. A fascinating specimen. Your core. It sings a song of such beautiful, stubborn order. He took a step closer, peering at Kaelen as if he were a rare butterfly. You wish to be added to my collection. We wish to make a trade, Silas said, stepping slightly in front of Kaelen. The Curator's gaze flicked to Silas, dismissive for a moment, then intrigued. The leader of the pack. Protective. A common but noble trait. He looked back at Kaelen. A trade. You have nothing I desire more than the warden himself. The warden is not for trade, Kaelen said, finding his voice. It was steady, but his services might be. The Curator's eyebrow rose. Oh, you collect knowledge, Kaelen continued, the plan forming as he spoke. You have echoes of warriors, mags, heroes, but do you have an echo of a place, a memory of the world as it was, before the veil was wounded? The Curator's expression became one of intense interest. A tantalizing proposition, but impossible. I cannot capture a place, only the echoes of beings. I can, Kaelen said. He focused, drawing on his reflective insight and the memory of the dying warden's vision. He projected it, not as an attack, but as an offering, a shimmering image of the whole, beautiful veil. The silver lattice cradling the stars appeared in the air between them. It lasted only for a second, but the Curator's breath caught. His eyes burned with avarice, a memory of the prime pattern. He whispered, mesmerized, You can give me this. I can create an echo of it for you. Kaelen said, a permanent exhibit, a window to the world that was, in exchange for the Genesis seed. It was a bluff. He wasn't sure he could do it. But the Curator, the ultimate collector, was faced with the one artifact he could never have obtained on his own. The collector was silent for a long, tense moment, weighing the value of a tool of creation against a memory of creation itself. An intriguing offer. He said finally, But I am not a fool. You will create the echo first. Then, you may have the seed. Chapter 109. The pressure was immense. Kaelen stood before the Curator. Silas a tense presence at his back. He had to create something from nothing. A perfect memory of a world he had only seen in a fleeting vision. He closed his eyes, shutting out the oppressive stillness of the archive. He reached for the paradox core, not for power, but for the foundational memory etched into its very code. The Warden's dying gift. He combined it with his reflective insight, the ability to see the true pattern of things. He wasn't a weaver. He couldn't create new reality. But he was a warden, a keeper of truth. He could take a truth and make it manifest. He focused on the memory, the interconnected light, the nurturing energy, the profound peace. He poured his will into it, using his authority to make it real in this place of captured echoes. The air in front of him began to shimmer. A complex, three-dimensional mandala of silver light began to form. Intricate and beautiful. It was not a simple image. It was a data-rich echo, containing the sensory and conceptual memory of the whole veil. It pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic light, a ghost of a heartbeat. It was the most draining thing he had done since the Heart of Sorrow. His core integrity, only at 35%, began to drop again. 34%. 33%. He held it, pouring more of himself into the construct, solidifying it. He felt a trickle of blood from his nose. Finally, it was done. A perfect, stable echo of the prime pattern hovered in the conservatory, its light casting soft shadows on the leaves. The Curator stared at it, his face a mask of rapturous awe. He reached out a trembling hand, not to touch it, but to feel its presence. Magnificent. He breathed. Utterly magnificent. He looked at Kaelen with something akin to reverence. You are an artist. He snapped his fingers. The Genesis seed floated from its pedestal and into Kaelen's waiting hand. It was warm, and holding it felt like holding a piece of a living star. The trade is concluded, the Curator said, his attention already fully consumed by his new prize. You may leave. Do not return uninvited. The next unique artifact you offer may not be enough to spare you. The way out, a simple oak door, appeared in the wall of the conservatory. They had done it. Chapter 110. They stumbled out of the archive of echoes and back into the dusty silence of the forgotten library. The moment the door sealed behind them, Kaelen collapsed to his knees, gasping. The strain of creating the echo on his still recovering core had been immense. Silas caught him, holding him up. Easy, kid. Easy. You did it. Jax and Lyra emerged from the shadows, their faces etched with relief. You got it. Jax asked. Silas held up the Genesis seed. It pulsed in his hand, its green light illuminating their tired, grim faces. We got it. Silas said. Now let's get the hell out of here before he changes his mind. As they helped Kaelen to his feet and out into the city's night, he looked back at the innocent-looking library door. They had outsmarted a sovereign. They had acquired a tool of immense power. But the cost of the victory was a new kind of fear. The Curator now knew of him. He had been measured, assessed, and found worthy of collection. He had escaped this time, but he had made an impression on a being of infinite patience and resources. He was no longer just a rumor or a threat. He was a desired object in the collection of a god. And collectors, he knew, rarely stopped until they possessed what they wanted. The Ashen Crow had pulled off a miracle, but in doing so, it had flown directly into the sights of the most patient hunter of all.